So this is called an Atlas Press map, and you might need a little bit of time to read this properly. Kind of looks like a jumbled up mess. So on the x-axis, we have basically all the continents and major regions of the Earth. And on the y-axis, we have time. So obviously 500 AD, 1000 AD, the more up we go, the more we are coming to our recent times. It's just a different way to visualize the rise and fall of different civilizations, but also which regions of Earth they really impacted. So obviously Rome is actually a lot more blobby than some of these other places because the Roman Empire affected Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Sometimes I even forget the Romans affected 3 whole different continents here. But as we move to an older empire, Greece, you get to see exactly how long each one of these nations affected specific regions of the Earth. Greece had a really weird straight out line that extends all the way to India, which here it's actually labeled as Central and South Asia. The reason why that looks really wonky is because this Greek Empire, or the Macedonian Empire in other words, they only had this for a couple of years there. But yes, Alexander the Great did extend his nation all the way to, well, modern Pakistan, parts of India. But yeah, it really didn't last that long. And the way the Atlas Press is, I mean, they put South Asia all the way over here in the corner. That is not usual. You usually don't see stuff like that. And when you do, it's much more closer to the modern times because we have the technology to be able to conquer like a bunch of the globe. This map really just shows how impressive Alexander the Great really was. You can also see where he literally ends this Persian Empire. It doesn't go any time above this. Now, there's different forms of that Persia. There's always an empire in modern-day Iranian lands. They just kind of chose to have different names. There's Iran right there. But let's talk about the elephant in the room here, European imperialization. Yes, they did combine all of Britain, France, Portugal, Spain, and the Netherlands. I kind of wish they didn't do that, but this graph would have to be a whole lot bigger to include each individual nation. Now, watch as this blue blob obviously just sticks to Europe and the Americas, but then it does eventually extend to Africa, to the Middle East, to Central and South Asia, to East Asia, and even Oceania. You know, the more I think about this, the more I hate that they decided to do it this way. Why did you not break up each individual nation? Are we claiming that the Vikings had the same European imperialization as the Great British Empire? Apparently, that's literally what this map is doing. All right, yeah, I hate that. Also, the Celts are here in the very beginning. That's kind of annoying. I don't like this as much now. It is funny to see the Brits make it over here to the American category, and then it just gets halted because the U.S. is born. And look at where the U.S. is compared to the rest of these empires. It shows just how young of a nation we really have. We literally didn't even exist before this moment. I mean, that's obvious, but I mean, like, look at how many things have happened before the United States was born. Another place I'd like to draw attention to is China, or the different forms and dynastic control the Chinese nations had. There's the Three Kingdom period, there's the Han period, there's the Tang period, the Song, the Yan, the Ming, the Qing, and then finally modern China here. This little explosion was the Imperial Japanese Empire. They did some chaotic things to China. I think this does a great job, though, showing how for most of history, China was definitely the greater power over Japan. And when Japan finally did start off their empire, it's because the Qing heavily declined. There was the warlord period. It was fractured. Now China's on the rise again, which is actually a historical norm that China was always more powerful than Japan. India has a very similar growth to China as well, with all the different forms, but India was a lot more divided, that's for sure, than China was, up until that European imperialization comes on over and forces them all together. I just now saw the Germans here, the Holy Roman Empire, the Habsburgs, then Germany. You want to guess what this was? I think you can tell. Just imagine a little mustache right here. Again, I don't really love this. I have problems with this, but it's all about just displaying the information in a different way to help you visualize things differently. And this Atlas Press map is definitely doing that, that's for sure. So much I didn't even get to talk about. Mongolia here, which eventually ends up forming out of the USSR, kind of. The end of the Ottomans because of European imperialization. The end of all the Native Americans also because of that European imperialization. I like how the Greeks with Alexander suddenly stretched out and just ended Persia 150 years after they started something. This map is so terrible. It defies belief, lol. Like, just look at the America section where they seem to think that it was a straight line from the classical Maya to the Aztec, despite them being in completely different places with totally different people and histories. I think this map also insinuates that just because you have a lot of land means you have a lot of power, and that's not always the case. There's definitely really small nations that certainly have a lot of power too. I honestly think this map projection needs to be forced down some kid... That might sound weird to say. It needs to be forced into your head. We're looking at the Dymaxion map projection, and it is peak. This is legitimately a proper map projection you can use. There is nothing stopping you from using the Dymaxion map projection. It absolutely mogs the Mercator map projection. No, but every map projection, believe it or not, does have a use. There is a reason why you kind of want to use certain map projections over others, and the reason being is that we obviously live on a globe, so whenever we try to project the globe on a 2D surface, it's gonna be wrong. Like, that's just the facts. We live on a blue marble floating in space. You cannot put this on like a piece of paper and expect students to learn it and understand what actually we live on. The most basic and most common mistake everyone seems to make when looking at a map like this is, wow, look at how far Canada and Alaska is from Russia. Canada and Alaska are way over here, and meanwhile Russia is way over here. Now the rebuttal to that is just to show a map projection where America is in the center. It shows, oh wow, look, Russia is actually not that far away from Alaska and Canada right here. But then there's another way to show that those landmasses are not that far away at all. With the Dymaxion map projection right here. This is why it's so peak. Yes, Alaska and Russia are very close together, but even Greenland is very close to Russia. Even the provinces of Nunavut and the Northwest Territories of Canada are very close to Russia. Most of the landmass in general on Earth is above the hemisphere. It's northern hemisphere, which means we all live very close together if you really think about it, especially when considering flight paths. If you're taking a flight from New York over to Europe, there's another reason why you got to consider the map projection you're looking at, because obviously flights don't care about 2D maps. They're going to try to get to their destination saving as much fuel and time as possible, which a lot of times that means going over the northern pole or somewhere nearby it at least. Funny enough, this map projection is only going to get more and more popular, especially in the shipping industry as the northern pole begins to melt down more and more. I know that's depressing, but with climate change, those ice sheets up there, they're going to go away, and there's going to be a whole lot more shipping lanes that are now opened up in this part of the globe. Yeah, I would not advise swimming from Portugal to Brazil. This map really shows how unfun that would be. Not that anyone should be thinking that Portugal to Brazil was easy, even on the Mercator map projection, but this map projection certainly shows just how, well, yep, that's a whole lot further. Yeah, if you want to learn more about like Antarctica and the southern hemisphere, definitely don't use that map projection though. At least New Zealand's even included, right? This does help a lot with visualizing how the early humans spread from Africa to Europe, to Asia, and eventually to the Americas. We start here, we move slightly here, some people go this way, other people go this way, then we go this way, we're like, okay, where are we gonna go now? Oh, look at this, boom, 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 all the way down to the Incas. Growing food seems like an important thing all countries should be able to do. Well, believe it or not, there's actually only 5 countries that have 50% of their territory able to do that.
Arable.
Arable, or used or suitable for growing crops. Kind of important, right? There's only 5 places on Earth with over 50% of its territory being arable. That is Denmark, that is Ukraine, that's Moldova, that's India, and then the big one here, Bangladesh. Bangladesh is in a whole new category. That's because over 60% of Bangladesh's land is arable. And you know what's terrifying about this? Bangladesh is very close to sea level. With sea level rise, we're gonna lose Bangladesh, at least a very big chunk of it. Also, Bangladesh has over like 170 million people that live here, something like that. Obviously, it's not required to have half of all your land be arable to be a proper nation. You can still certainly function without 50%, but these are very impressive places on Earth. And I'm even more impressed with the bigger places like Ukraine and like India. These are some of the biggest nations literally on Earth, and yet still half their land can be used to grow crops on it. This is why the nickname of Ukraine is referred to as the breadbasket of Europe. This is also a very good reason why it's very important to protect Ukraine during this Russian invasion, obviously. There's another way to visualize the information. There's a lot of countries that are close to that 50%. This map is including countries that are just at 40% or 30%. That is a huge chunk of Europe. It's actually quite impressive. And then South Asia as a whole, very arable. I mean, obviously Pakistan didn't make the list, but they're at 40%. I mean, that's still really impressive. Compare that to North America, then that's crazy. We're crazy low. There's obviously a ton of geographic factors here. You obviously do not want to live in a desert like the Sahara Desert or anything in Australia. You also don't want to live in a tundra. I'm looking at you, Russia. I'm looking at you, Canada. You also wouldn't want to live in a country with like a lot of mountains. That's Switzerland, or very hilly. That's Iran. Some of the least arable places on Earth are Suriname, Greenland, and Singapore. Singapore, that's not really fair. Singapore is just like a really tiny space. Obviously, Greenland is very high up in the north. Even the Bahamas, the Vatican City, these are small places. So don't be a small place, don't be a city-state, don't be an island somewhere, don't live in a frozen wasteland. Here's the actual breakdown of all the exact percentages. Obviously, Bangladesh just barely hits that 60% mark, but that's still really impressive. Are Arabs not arable? What? Maps that make you go, Latin America, ¿qué estás puta haciendo? Can I say that? I guess I just did. But what time does school start in your country? There is such a wide variety here. But Colombia, 6 a.m.? That's just evil. Who does that to their kids? Do y'all hate your kids? You must. And then their neighbor very close, somewhere between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. So maybe think like 6:30 basically. Brazil, Venezuela, and then a couple of Central American nations, they're having their kids come in at 7 a.m., which is still kind of early. Now that I think about it though, I did have a 0 period one of my last years in high school, and I had to get there at like 6:30 a.m. But I chose to do that. Like, that was my own dumbass fault. In my high school in LA, our start time was 7:50 a.m. It looks like that's about the same for Mexico and the nation of Haiti. 7:50, honestly, in retrospect, that still feels pretty early. I never wake up before 7:50 a.m. anymore. And I'm a 30-year-old man, all right? One of the nice things I will say about waking up early to go to school, though, is you get out of school a lot earlier. So in Colombia, y'all better get out of school at like, man, noonish. I bet you that's not the case. I bet you they'd be like making those kids go to school for like 9 hours. If you think I'm messing around too, no. Thailand literally makes their kids go to school for 9.5 hours. Cambodia not too far behind. In the country of Colombia, the average school day is split into 2 shifts, with students either attending morning shift or from 6 a.m. to 12. Oh, I was right. Or you can do the afternoon shift. That's crazy. What the hell? What the? That's actually based. Damn, I wonder what I would have chosen. Actually, I'm stupid. Obviously, I would have chosen 12 to 6. I was just stupid like that. All right, if you have a choice, Colombia, that's kind of cool. I actually like this now. How is everyone literally not choosing, though, 12 to 6? Like, you're talking about 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. Who wants to wake up at 6 a.m.? I mean, I'm sure there's some, but I bet you like 75% of them are choosing 12 to 6, no? I actually don't like this, believe it or not. Uruguay, 10 a.m.? That feels late. Even though I was just complaining 7:50 a.m. for my high school seemed a little bit too early. 10 for sure seems too late. I wouldn't go a minute over 9 a.m. 8 to 9 a.m., that's fine. Chile and Argentina, I get it. I wonder if this is like a Southern Hemisphere thing. Oh, y'all really don't like to wake up early, do you? Down here in Southern South America. They're only going to school from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. What the hell? I got out at basically 3 p.m. and I had to start at 7:50. That's not fair. What the hell? In the summer months, it's 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Damn, are y'all not even going to school? Well, private schools typically have longer days, typically 7 to 8 hours. I would have loved to have gone to school for only like 5 hours, although I'd probably be stupider than I am right now. Finland has school for only 4 to 5 hours? What did I do in the previous life for God to punish me like this? Colombian here, even in college, we have 6 a.m. classes. Not every day, but it happens. Is it not one of those things where you get to choose? I mean, if you yourself elected to have a class at 6 a.m., that's on you in college, in America at least. I'm a teacher, and the number one hardest to bear part of the job for me isn't pay or classroom size or anything else. It's having to get to work between 7:30 and 8 a.m. every day. I'd imagine one of the nice things, though, is all the kids are literally dead in that first period class. Like, you're not really going to have too many people acting up, I would guess, because everyone's just sleeping. Apparently, Brazil also has the 2 choices, the 2 periods. You can choose to do a morning one or a lunch shift. Colombian student here, yes, it's torture. You have to get up at 4:30 to 5 a.m. to shower, yeah, and then your commute over. Oh, man, just end me already. I think a lot of people are going to be shocked to find this out. This is Roman emperors and their cause of death. I saw a lot of red, so I assumed, oh, that must be all the Roman emperors that died just because of natural causes, right? No, that is not what's happening here. All this red, which like a majority of the rows here are red, these Roman emperors died because of assassination. I thought it was just Caesar that got stabbed a couple times. Are you telling me the Romans were just doing this on the reg? It was just a tradition that started with Caesar, but that is the first portrait here, and they just kept it up. They're like, well, that guy's getting kind of old. Time to stab. From Augustus to Caligula. Okay, well, that guy probably deserved it. Maybe a lot of these deserved it. I'm not sure, but believe it or not, the only Roman emperors that don't have a filter over it, so basically all of this doesn't have a filter over it, this guy doesn't have a filter over it, those are the only emperors that died of natural causes. Bro, that's it. Everyone else had horrible things happen to them. If the emperor's portrait here is in blue, like this here, then this guy died in battle, which maybe that's kind of cool. That's a cool way to go out. Oh, my bad. That was actually not a cool way to go out. I misread that. In blue, they oofed themselves. It's the pink ones right here. These, wow, that guy's horrifying looking. These ones died in battle, which funny enough, it's like literally towards the bottom of the list. Is this not telling that the Roman Empire was collapsing? Like, these guys just kept on oofing themselves in battle accidentally. So only 3 offed themselves. Meanwhile, 8 were taken out in battle. In green, there's only 4 of these. These guys died of illness. Illness or an accident. That's kind of, those are 2 different things. Why'd they put that in one category? Anyways, I like how 75% out of those 4 is towards when the Roman Empire was beginning to collapse. I mean, it was going to split and then the western side would collapse at least. Bro, they were doing some of these portraits dirty. Why were they making them so creepy? Like, I get it when the nose fell off, like, okay, but some of these emperors just look like aliens. Part of the problem, part of the reason why so many of the emperors were offed by people is because there was a lack of clear succession. Also due to ambition and political rivalry. Some of these are definitely wrong, it appears. Some of them, there's still debate exactly how they were taken out. Remind me to never become a Roman emperor. Some countries have literal religious requirements in order to become the head of state, and unsurprisingly, a lot of those countries are coming from the Middle East or the Muslim world. The vast majority of these countries that require the head of state to also be Muslim are coming from Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Jordan, Morocco. Well, actually, I mentioned Lebanon. Lebanon is one of the only countries on earth, along with Andorra, where they require a Christian religion to be the head of state. In the case of Lebanon, maybe that makes sense because they're surrounded here, but is it not a requirement though for the person leading the Vatican City to also be a Christian? I mean, I don't even know if it's possible for the Pope to be anything else but a Christian. I guess they could vote in anyone they want, can't they? There's 2 places on earth that require their head of states to be Buddhist, that is Bhutan and Thailand. Obviously, the Islamic requirements stretch from the Maldives over to Malaysia and even Brunei, but Indonesia is the only country on the list that requires what is that? What the hell is even that? Is it some type of fusion religion? Foundational ideology with 5 principles: belief in God, just and civilized humanity, the unity of Indonesia, democracy. What the hell? Did Indonesia make an ideological religion or something like that? Oh, also social justice for all people of Indonesia. It is a political ideology, so you must follow this religion to be the head of state. I didn't know you could do that. It's interesting because Indonesia's like heavily Muslim too. Not all the islands, but definitely the bigger ones. So yeah, this map is showing the countries where the law requires the head of state to be one of these faiths. The map does not include, however, the 8 countries that have banned clergy from being head of state. A lot of those places are coming from Latin America: Bolivia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, Myanmar, Nicaragua, Paraguay, and Venezuela. Yeah, a lot are coming from Latin America. In Lebanon, the prime minister has to be Sunni, and the president has to be Christian, and the speaker of the parliament has to be Shia. Apparently, that's the same with Iraq. The head of state for the UK is the king or queen, who also holds a position as head of the Church of England. Shouldn't the Vatican be highlighted? That's what I was saying. It's funny because in the US, we don't have anything like that. We don't have any requirements to be a certain faith, but all of our presidents have been Christian. Maybe the day that it doesn't and it starts to switch, who knows what the law could bring then. These countries are, well, they're dealing with very diverse faith population. The French were about to try something wild in Africa. This was the proposed Trans-Saharan Railway back in the day. It's important to remember this was all a part of the French Empire at the time. This was all French Africa. I really want to know when they came up with this plan though, because these are some really awkward years. 1942, 1943. Was this before or after the Germans walked into Paris? All right, I was gonna say 1879. This is way before World War II. It was way before even World War I. First image on the Wikipedia page, the enslaved laborers used for this project. Great. This is interesting. So this was their excitement coming out of the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference occurred in 1884. This is 6 years later. So France had just carved up Africa. And obviously rail back in those days was still all the rage. So they're like, hey, what if we make a nice big old rail line through the Sahara Desert? I mean, the funny thing is, I think people would love this if they actually did do this. Although this would be pretty old. 1942, it was going to take them every year to stretch across the sandy desert, the low marsh, the arid plateau. I mean, they were not even planning to actually connect it down this way until like 50 years. It might be a fun trip though from someone from the south of France. You take like a little boat or ferry over to Tunis and then bam, jump on the rail. You'll go all the way down. Remember at this time, the French actually had Morocco too. Here's Casablanca. This would probably take a very, very long time to actually get down this way. Probably wouldn't be a very fun ride, but it'd be kind of cool if they, okay, I don't really want like an old school rail line, but like a high-speed bullet train through the Sahara Desert. That sounds like a blast. Slap one of those fancy fast Japanese trains through this environment, literally heaven on earth. That would be so amazing. Oh wow, so this map was actually published in 1941. Yeah, you would think they would have bigger fish to fry in the 1940s. Defending this from bandits would go crazy. And here's a big thank you to this month's patrons. Can white people smell the rain? It's pronounced Tour des Sillas, Drew. DruuuWu Labubu. Conquered Bread. White Grape of the Pirates. Never change, Drew. Unless you want to. LuxembourgLover. Fredrik Tibblin. Pavlik. KingBearHaze. NordTyrol. LoreTrack. Name here.
Nolan.
Check the Patreon link down below in the description.